Hey there, Ron Sullivan, your online hitting consultant. I want to share with you how I introduce the concept of hip and shoulder separation to young players, particularly prepubescent players, those that are 12 and under, boys or girls. And again, it's an introduction. So it's important to understand that typically when you hear about people talk about hip to shoulder separation, they're talking about the power elements of hitting, right? In other words, as the hips are unloading, there's still pullback in the upper half, that kind of stuff. That's not what we're talking about here. I hope to show today why I use this, and it's real clear on your end, and maybe you can judge by what your player does if they have this, or if they have a need for understanding this concept. So you see I've drawn some boxes over here on the right. This is my buddy Easton, and I'm trying to introduce the concept of hip to shoulder separation. All right, so by the way, I've known Easton for a while now. I think I started working with him earlier this year. And to be quite honest with you, regardless if I get in the way or not, this kid was going to be a good ball player. You can tell by his attitude. Some of you coaches know what I'm talking about. He comes into the facility, his eyes are wide open, he's excited. He communicates with you when you talk to him about hitting. He can tell you every single pitch and every at-bat the whole weekend. Just really got a great baseball brain, so I wasn't going to get in the way of this kid. And but when I met him, though, the typical things that you see, I always ask myself this question. Not how do I rebuild this player? It's what's inefficient. I always find out what's good about the player, and then I say, what's inefficient? What concept do they need to understand a little bit better? And so you can see that kids have they're pretty good at turning their body sideways. Now, he doesn't have the same exact drag patterns that you're going to see most kids that are learning, but he does have this idea of just kind of turning his body sideways and using the back of his body to kind of help push where the bat's going to go. You can see this pelvic push at the end. You can see his back hip socket rotated around his front hip socket. And over here on the right, you see his pelvis facing the zone. And anytime you're hitting a ball sitting still, if your pelvis is rotating away from that, you're probably not training yourself to do good things for a moving target environment. All right, so what's the problem here on the left? Okay. And this, I think, is consistent with most kids, is you'll see that their body, in terms of separation, works like this. There's the back side of their body, and there's the front side of the body. This is how rotation for kids works, is they're going to rotate the back side around the front side. Every kid learning. Now, most won't look exactly like this. If a player has significant drag, you'll see that these boxes, you could just turn them, you could rotate them, and then have the back leg through the front shoulder, and then everything below that in the front leg in the other box, right? So, but this is pretty common, though, the back side rotating around the front side. And this is where the push characteristics that you hear people talk about come from, especially at a young age. It may look different as they grow older, but whenever you use the back hip, the back leg, the thigh, and everything in this box to drive direction. So they use their backside to help push where the bat is going to go to some degree. That's wrong. So it has nothing to do with what his hip looks like on video or if his back knee did some secret move. It has nothing to do with it. If you're using that to throw direction, you're in trouble. That's not what the back hip is intended to do. If your bat is moving at the same rate or is connected to the hip turn, the hips are slow twitch muscles, I think. Don't hold me. But your bat shouldn't be moving at the same rate as the amount of hip turn, right? So what we're doing over here on the right, and I'm just going to be really honest with you. All right, there's 3 other core movements that I've worked on in the past with this player that didn't even involve a bat. Like we're doing exercises from the ground up to get him to rethink his natural athletic points in terms of counterbalancing points and all these kind of things, okay? And that's not what's not shown here. But this can be, in itself, can be a useful tool if you're translating this idea correctly to the player. Right, so all we're doing over here on the right is I'm trying to get him to think about 2 different operations. What's happening in the belly button up and what's happening in the belly button down. And what this player is doing is literally once he throws the barrel through, he's sitting down on his knee. All right, now is that an exaggeration? Obviously, that's a huge exaggeration. But kids are so good about pushing their backside around their front side that I have to get him to think completely different. And to be honest with you, in this particular rep, you see these flexion points that come out as he's going back to finish on the right. That is my preference. I think my goal with little boys and girls learning the game is to try to train them from the ground up to use their natural athleticism as much as possible. Some of you have watched the Alex Bregman hitting coach. They're asking him questions because he's been with Bregman since he was like 13. And somebody asks him, is it all in the hips? And he kind of snickers and he goes, we don't work on that. And most people won't listen to his follow-up to that was, when you give athletes athletic things to do, they're going to do athletic things. And that is the opposite of what we do in baseball and softball, especially softball. It's a pandemic in softball. Is we think if the kid doesn't understand biomechanically how to move, then they're not going to do it right. And if you override the athlete with mechanical robotic movement, I don't care how good the video looks, you're going to be in trouble at some point. You never want to override the athlete. And so his response from the ground up, to me, is ideal here on the right. That's what I want my kids to understand about hitting. If you're holding a straight leg after you hit a ball, it's not always wrong. This is not, my intention is not saying this, everything over here on the left is wrong. But I don't really see an advantage to that. And the other thing is, and you'll see his front leg goes into some state of extension here. And this is what I would consider the right kind of extension. If you're really making a big deal out of the player's front leg extending as the main goal. Like I just had an evaluation the other night where the kid said, Coach told me the other day I need to straighten my leg. Probably the worst advice you can tell a little boy or girl is that their leg's not straightening. Because what are they going to do? They're going to use the flexion points in their front leg. What are they? Well, extension works this direction. Flexion works this direction. So what are they going to do? To straighten their leg out, they're going to work on where the flexion and extension point is. Well, that's not ground force. This direction is not ground force. So extension should come from this presence, from the ground up, being against that instead of something the leg is doing. So this is really important. What I've learned is if you tell kids just in general, hey, you're not straightening your leg out of contact, you'll get it. It won't be for the right reasons, right? So using these foundational exercises that I use, I get play. But this is the main ingredient, really, to all the movements, and this is why I'm sharing this, is I'm literally just trying to get this player to do two different operations, right? One is throwing barrels, one is sitting in the backside. Is that literally how it works? Maybe not, but compared to this is what players that have a left side and right side need to understand, is that we're not just moving and turning the backside around the front side. If you have any questions about what I do, you can reach out at ronsullivan99@gmail.com. Appreciate y'all watching. See ya.